Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in today's training for public housing repositioning. Can everyone hear me okay? Um, Today, I want to talk to you all about some of the repositioning options that HUD has available to our housing authorities. As most of you know, HUD began repositioning and talking to PHAs about repositionings a little over a year, almost a year and a half ago. Um, and some of you may not have as much information as you like, or you may be on the fence about should you do it, should you not do it, or just need more information about what the processes are and what your options are. Repositioning allows public housing authorities to convert their public housing low rent units to a Section 8 platform. The reason that a lot of this is happening is because there's not very much federal funding available to meet the needs of public housing right now. A lot of housing authorities need to um, repair, rehab, or even build new housing units, and repositioning provides that opportunity to the housing authorities. Some of the other things that repositioning allows is, like I just mentioned, it provides housing authorities the opportunity to modernize the units. Um, as I just mentioned, a lot of the units um, need updating. The capital funds aren't there to provide the money that's necessary to rehab property. So one of the major advantages of repositioning is it's the opportunity to modernize the properties. It allows the housing authorities to stabilize their revenues. That again goes back to the funding that's available, and repositioning allows you to partner with external private investors, and you can generate more revenue to do work that needs to be done at the property. That work again can be major rehab and or new construction. One of the other avenues that repositioning offers is for housing authorities to look at a Section 18 program, which allows the housing authority to take a good look at their property and decide whether or not this is something that they want to demolish and rebuild, or demolish and provide vouchers, and or maybe they want to dispose of the property and use those proceeds to provide new affordable housing. It also allows the housing authorities to partner with their community city officials. You can partner with the city. They may have projects where they want to provide opportunities for uh, different populations, seniors and or families, or maybe something with veterans. It just gives you the opportunity to partner with the community, and you all work hand in hand to provide the housing that's needed for your particular region. It also allows the housing authority to um, work in areas where you may have a heavy population of public housing, where you have a concentration of poverty, and you have people living in these areas, and uh, repositioning allows you to deconcentrate those areas, and where you can these families can move out and into other sections of the cities where they're in mixed communities, mixed income communities. And one of the other advantages is it allows the housing authority to streamline their operations. For those of you who are working at the housing authorities, you are probably well aware of all of the administrative requirements that HUD requires. And I have a few of those things listed on the screens right on the PowerPoint right here. So a lot of you know that, we contact you for your EPIC, your operating subsidy, when you want to take a unit offline, um, about your occupancy reporting, environmental reviews. There are a long list of administrative requirements with public housing. And these are just some of the things that will be eliminated with the conversion of your public housing to one of the repositioning cylinders. Not only does the housing authority gain, you get the opportunity to assist your residents. The residents gain because this repositioning allows the housing authority to provide upgraded upgraded units. So the residents get an opportunity to um, live in units that may have um, more amenities than they have had in the past. The residents benefit because with repositioning, we are extending and preserving affordable housing. So it provides long-term rental assistance to residents. And one of the bigger advantages I think residents would like with the repositioning is that it allows them to the flexibility to obtain an HCV voucher because uh, repositioning offers choice mobility. So after a year in or a year or two, depending on the program, the resident has the opportunity to relocate. So what are the repositioning options that are available? Well, there are the one that most of you probably have heard more about is the RAD program. The RAD program started in 2012, and we've had a lot of housing authorities take advantage of the rental assistance demonstration program. And just again, within the last year or so, we have also introduced or reintroduced Section 18 and the streamlined voluntary conversion process to our housing authority. With the RAD program, the housing authority has the option of converting their public housing units through the Section 8 project-based rental assistance program, and or they can remain in public housing and convert their low rent units to Section 8 project-based vouchers. I'm going to go a little bit into more detail with these programs as I go through the slide, but I do want you to know that you have these three options, actually four, because with the rental assistance demonstration program in Section 18, you get this option to do a RAD blend, which allows you to do part of your units will be RAD up to 75% conversion to RAD, and then the remaining 25% you can go Section 18. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So how do you decide as a housing authority which option is best for you, and how do you navigate this process? Um, the field office will work with you if repositioning is something that you're thinking about. We will work with your housing authorities one-on-one. You'll be able to have conversations with your portfolio management specialist where you can, after kind of analyzing your housing authority and deciding which route you may be interested in, your portfolio management specialist can meet with you to give you more detail about the option that you're thinking about. Not only that, HUD has a repositioning panel that you can meet with, do teleconference calls where they can answer some of your more specific questions regarding repositioning, what options may work best for you. So that's an appointment that can be set. We also have expediters who will work with you with your application process. So with each one of these cylinders, of course, you're going to submit an application to HUD to navigate you through this process. And Section 18 and streamlined voluntary conversion has expediters assigned to help you with your Section 18 application. Also, I just want to add that some of our housing authorities, depending on the size, some of them do hire consultants who have already worked with several other housing authorities to help them navigate the process of going through repositioning. That's not necessary. I mean, it's obviously it's your choice if you want to do that, but we do feel like with your portfolio management specialist to assist you with the Section 18 application expediters that we have on board, with the repositioning panel that HUD has to help you through this process. Hiring a consultant isn't absolutely necessary, but it is great knowing that you have somebody who's been through the process with other PHAs who can help you navigate your options as well. So again, we get back to which repositioning option works for my PHA. Well, in order to help you to determine that, you really have to do an analysis of your housing authority. You've got to think about what uh, what are some of the what households do you want to serve? What is your community like? What are the fair market rents in your area? Should I go RAD and or should I go repositioning? Um, uh, what about my reserves I have? Am I able to use those reserves? I don't have an HCV program. How is that going to work? Um, what are the needs of my community? So there are a lot of questions that you need to ask yourselves about your housing authority. And those are questions that you can talk through with your portfolio management specialist again. And with our staff here, we are willing to sit down with you and do a one-on-one with you with all of your questions to help you to decide which route you want to go. The first one I'm going to start talking about again is the RAD program. And the rental assistance, the RAD program um, has there are two routes to go if a housing authority decides they want to go RAD. With RAD, a housing authority can either choose to do PBRA, which is project-based rental assistance, or PBV. If a housing authority chooses the PBRA option, you really are leaving the public housing program altogether. Your units, your after conversion, you will be working with our multifamily program and under multifamily rules and regulations. If you decide to go PBV, the public, those units, those vouchers are now under, you're still in public housing, and you remain with public housing. So if you go PBRA, you're going to multifamily program. PBV, you remain in public housing. Now, RAD is the only cylinder in repositioning that gives you the option of PBV or PBRA. Streamline and Section 18 are both project-based vouchers only. With RAD, these are not all the features. I just pulled out a few of them. With RAD, you have predictable rents. You're still operating on the same funding platform. So currently, before you convert, you're receiving your funding through your operating subsidy and capital funds. You are still receiving the same amount of funding, except that it converts from the capital funds and operating subsidy to a Section 8 HAP contract. And also with the rents with RAD, your future rent increases are based on an annual operating cost adjustment factor. And I might add that these factors are not that large, but they're rent increases that you will receive every year. One of the other things with RAD is the capital needs assessment. You will need to do a capital needs assessments to determine the amount of work your property needs. What type of capital improvements are you looking at? is your property in a condition where you just need to do some rehab on the units? Or do you have, is it in a condition where you may want to do new construction? The capital needs assessments will determine and will determine what needs to be done, so you'll have an idea of the amount of financing that's required for your deal based on the improvements that are needed at your property. Also, with the RAD feature, when you convert, you will be required to set up a replacement for reserve escrow account where you're setting aside future dollars for future repairs to your property after conversion. Um, with tenants' rights, with RAD, all of your current residents have the right to return. So if you're going to be doing rehab at your property, when that rehab is complete, your residents have the right to come back to that property. One of the other main things with the RAD program is there is no rescreening of residents either. The residents do not have to re-qualify to remain at the property. With RAD, I mentioned earlier, there is choice mobility is tied to repositioning, and that's with all of the cylinders. Um, with choice mobility, your residents after living at the property after a year, but I believe with PBRA it's 2 years, your residents have the right to request a voucher to relocate. One of the other things to keep in mind is really important with repositioning, no matter which cylinder you're in, is keeping the residents informed of what you're doing. So you will need to have regular resident meetings where you're informing them of the process, uh, resident meetings where you're talking about the relocation of the residents if that's necessary. You are responsible for the relocation cost for your residents. So it's really important that you keep residents informed, and that's part of the process with RAD is advising HUD when you are having these meetings. That all information will have to be kept for the record. Public stewardship. So the ownership control after conversion, it could be public or nonprofit. The one thing to really remember about RAD is that you will be tied to a use agreement. There will be a use agreement on the property, and there's also your HAP is a renewable HAP. So at the end, it's required that you renew your HAP contract when you get to the end of your first term. Well, on this slide here, I wanted to just kind of give you an idea. I talked about the rents with RAD. Um, your rents are based on your current funding at the time you submit your application. So here on this slide, you'll see that depending on when you submit your application, right now, RAD funding is based on 2018 contract rents. And again, keep in mind that once you convert, your rent increases will be based on the operating cost adjustment factor. And that's an annual increase to your rents going forward. Um, one thing to keep in mind with RAD, if you choose RAD as an option for repositioning, it's one it's one of the main benefits with RAD is that you get to use your RAD reserves, your capital fund, your operating reserves. You get to use your funding towards your repositioning. So if you're converting with RAD, you can use up to $100,000 of your operating funds towards your pre-development expenses with RAD. And you get to do that without HUD approval. Anything over and beyond $100,000, you need HUD approval for your pre-development expenses, but you can use your reserves, your capital funds towards your RAD conversion. You're not allowed to you don't have that same option with the other two cylinders. So right now, RAD has, even though it's only been out since 2012, it's already in its fourth revision, and hopefully this is the fourth and final revision. But the HUD notice for RAD is 2019-23. You're also going to want to pay close attention to notice 2016-17 because it's going to talk about fair housing. Fair housing has a part to play in the RAD process, so you'll have to provide documentation for that. And it also talks about the relocation notice. The one thing that I would advise anyone that's interested in RAD in doing is to access HUD's RAD resource desk, and anyone can access that. This platform has a wealth of knowledge about RAD. It's very easy to navigate. It breaks down when you log onto the site and gain access. It has all of the notices regarding RAD. You're able to search the application. You're able to search the different processes that RAD will take you through. When you when you want to apply for RAD, everything that you need is going to be conducted through the RAD resource desk. Your application that you access will be on the RAD resource desk. Your financing plan, everything that you're doing, your financing plan, your environmental review, that will be done through the RAD resource desk as well. The one thing I want to back up a little bit, the one thing I didn't mention is when you're going through the RAD resource desk, you'll make your application. If your application is approved, HUD will issue you a CHAP award. It's basically your notification saying you're approved to convert however many number of units you applied to RAD. And as you go through this process, once you get your CHAP award, you will have to access secure systems and go into PIC, and you will have to you'll have to process a PIC removal application. Basically, you're going in and telling HUD, all right, I'm going to convert 50 of my 100 units through RAD process. So you'll go through a PIC removal process, and there's a host of other processes you'll have to go through with RAD. But again, all of that information can be accessed on the RAD resource desk. And if it's something that you want to go through, we'll do a deeper dive with the actual steps at a later time. All right, Section 18. Section 18 is another cylinder for repositioning. With Section 18, the PHA is deciding if you're going to demolish the property or if you're going to sell the property. The notice for Section 18 that you will want to reference is HUD Notice 2018-04. One of the things when you decide to go with Section 18, the impacted residents are going to receive tenant protection vouchers. And so tenant protection, the vouchers and relocations is going to play a huge part, is a very huge part of the Section 18 process. And again, I've already mentioned with Section 18, the PHA is going to determine whether or not they're going to demolish the property or whether or not they're going to sell the property. So when you're getting ready to go through the Section 18 process, to go this route, you have to provide a justification as to which option you are choosing. You don't get to say, well, I think it might be a good idea if we just build something new. You have to actually qualify you have to actually meet the criteria to go Section 18. So when you're doing this, you're going to fill out an application with the Special Application Center. A lot of us call it the SAC. That's a HUD form 52860. when you are going to section 18, you have 4 options. You have several options actually that you can choose whether or not, excuse me. When you go in section 18, you have to qualify and determine which criteria fits your housing authority. So with section 18, disposition, excuse me 1 second. Excuse me. With section 18, it requires the housing authority to transfer the property to a separate legal entity. The entity can be independently or wholly controlled by the PHA. The other thing with section 18 is that your residents are issued tenant protection vouchers. When you go section 18, you're actually submitting 2 separate applications to the Special Application Center. You're submitting one application for the section 18 itself, whether it's demolition or whether it's disposition. The SAC will review that and determine whether or not it's approved. If they approve your application, you have to resubmit another application for your tenant protection vouchers. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is you may be a housing authority that has low rent units and you may not have an HCV program. So if you don't have an HCV program, that doesn't stop you from choosing to reposition, because what you can do is you can partner with a neighboring PHA to administer your vouchers for you. That, of course, has to be, you have to go through your board. Your board would have to approve you going through both boards, the receiving PHA and the administering PHA. You both would have to get approval for administering the vouchers for the respective PHA. So with section 18, or Byron.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon.
I'm sorry, my screen is. Can you guys hear me?
There was like a second or two we didn't hear you. Does Byron need to does he need to share his screen? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Hold on a minute. Just a moment, please. Okay, I'm sorry, my internet connection, it seems to be a lag on my end.
But I can see what you have on screen, Kimberly. I can.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Hattie from Texas Naro. I can see I see section 18 disposition criteria.
Okay, all right, thank you guys. So again, I had mentioned that with section 18, the PHA can choose to dispose of the property or the PHA can choose demolition. So with section 18, so the options are you can meet the criteria for disposition if your PHA is a very small PHA with 50 or fewer units. You can meet the criteria under obsolescence. Your building is just so outdated and old that it's not even cost effective for you to do anything else with it. I mentioned earlier that there was a RAD blend. You can choose the RAD blend route. That is, if you say have 100 units, you can convert 75 of those units, go into traditional RAD route, and the remaining 25% you can receive of those units. You can go project-based vouchers with those. Um, you have improved efficiency and effectiveness, where it's in the best interest that you rehab those units on site. Byron, I'm gonna ask you to jump in for a minute and help me out on the disposition.
Yes. In terms of the disposition, again, it's the criteria is a lot of time it's surrounding, areas. If there's problem marketing, um, the location is just not suitable anymore. That's one of the things. Scatter sites is one of them listed that you have. I've seen some where, um, literally in other states where you have a PHA office, administrative office, you have them maybe 10 miles away or 15 miles, a property, and no one's on site to manage that property, when it began, it worked out fine, but as time went by, it became more difficult to manage. So there could be various things. It could be one or more of these criteria of the interest and consistency. But with a small 50 or fewer, it's pretty much streamlined in terms of, what you want to do, especially the blend. Um, that's all I would say on that, on the disposition.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate your help out on that. So with demolition, the PHA has to demonstrate, you have to demonstrate that there really is no need, it is not cost effective to pour money, to pour funds into this property and try to make all the necessary repairs. I mean, literally, it would be more cost effective for the property to be demolished than it would be for you to spend the funds to try to make the unit livable and acceptable for the residents. Also, you could have the situation where the location of the property is just not suitable. Also, it could be located in an area that has proven to be crime ridden, in an area that it's not even a good location for residents. I mean, we have a project where there literally is like very little city transportation. The city may have grown, but those services are not in areas as conducive for their residents to reach. You have marketability issues, just factors that impede the uh, make it impossible for that property to remain viable. Uh, de minimis demolition. So in any 5-year period, a PHA can choose to, with demolition, they can choose to demolish the lesser of 5 dwelling units or 5% of the total public housing units on their property. I have to admit, I haven't dealt a lot with de minimis demolition, so I'm not going to try to speak on that in this particular area. Um, right now, with Section 18, again, I want to kind of briefly review the steps with you. If you decide you want to go Section 18, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to submit that Section 18 application. And you're going to be in secure systems, in the PIC system. That's where you're going to take care of the application and get everything submitted. You're going to have to upload all of your documents related to the repositioning in PIC. And so you're going to want to have a meeting with your residents to talk about what you're proposing to do. And of course, you're going to have board approval. There are other things you have to do, like submitting your PHA plan to HUD, because you're going to have to let us know what your plans are. Uh, you're going to have to do environmental reviews if you're talking about demolition or rebuilding. Again, uh, there are a lot of steps involved, but we are more than willing to work with you and be there to extend our help to help you through the process. And the presentation today is just to give you a brief overview of what the repositioning options are, but we will provide a training where we can go into detail of the actual steps in the process if you choose to go one of these routes.
Yeah, Kimberly, I don't know how to raise my hand on this thing, but I just want to make a comment on that de minimis.
Yes,
And it
thank you.
says, in a 5-year period, this can be done. On paper, yeah, it says that, but in some way, if you're going to do that, an agency, either in their capital fund 5-year action plan or PHA plan, they would be identifying that, on paper. Um, I don't know the rationale why it's stated that way, but I would encourage any PHA, if you're talking about demolishing a public housing, you definitely should definitely inform the field office of your plan before you actually do it, because there's other issues to consider regarding that. So even though it says that, I encourage you to, if you contemplate it in the future, inform the field office before you do it.
All right, thank you for adding that. So in section 18, again, the notice regarding section 18 and the requirements is 2018-04. The other thing that is very helpful that we will be able to provide you with, we have a section 18 demolition checklist. It basically summarizes the application process. I mean, it walks you through all of the requirements, everything that you need to do to get you through this step. And again, your PMS will be able to assist you with this. Your section 18 application expediters will be able to help you with this. And also a notice that recently came out is HUD Notice 2020-23. And that notice talks about the use of sale proceeds with demolition. It tells you what you can and cannot use your net and gross proceeds for as you go through this process. I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that, because you'll want to make sure that the funds you're expending the funds in the appropriate way. Go. Excuse me. All right, the RAD Section 18 blend, I don't have a whole lot to add about that. I do have a couple of things I haven't mentioned already, because I've already mentioned that with the RAD Section 18 blend, you're not going full RAD, you're not going full Section 18, you're doing a blend of the two, of at least 75% conversion to RAD and up to 25% for project-based vouchers. The big caveat with Section 18 is that with the financing, you cannot finance with 9% tax credits on Section 18. You are, however, are able to partner with the developer with 4% tax credits. You just cannot do 9% tax credit. Also, your construction costs must meet 60%. You have to have at least 60% hard construction costs. So one of the things that HUD will be able to provide you with, we have information on what qualifies for hard construction costs and how to meet that 60% criteria. That's information when we go into more detail with you. If this is one of the options that you're selecting, we can go into more detail with you.
Hey, Kim, this is David. I just want to mention that so headquarters is they're talking about this RAD blend, and is there a way?
Decided,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, they're looking at ways. Is there a way to make this RAD blend a little more attractive? I think right now that window, if you're at 60% hard construction cost limit, you're pretty close to meeting the obsolescence test to get overall disposition or demolition approved. And so it's a pretty small window because if that 25% project-based vouchers, not limited to the rad rents, is attractive to you, then you're close to being able to do 100% project-based vouchers. If you get approved for regular disposition. So right now it's kind of I don't think we're seeing a lot of activity on the rad blend because the folks who would qualify for the rad blend often also qualify for outright disposition, which is more attractive. But anyway, they're tinkering with this, and there may be some more documentation, more information coming out soon.
Yeah, I actually I've only gone through one myself. I think more PHAs are opting to go either Section 18 or voluntary conversion. I don't see a whole lot choosing this option, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't work for you. So again, our HUD SharePoint site, we're able to provide you with, we have FAQs on the Section 18, and we'd be able to provide that information to you to help you with your decision making. So the streamlined voluntary conversion process, if you opt to go this strategy, it's designed for small PHAs with 250 or fewer units. And I want to add right away with this process, with Section 18, your residents are going to get you're able to project base those vouchers. The huge difference, the standout with streamlined voluntary conversion is that your residents are getting tenant-based vouchers, and you have to get the residents' approval or / permission to project base their vouchers. So knowing that up front is important because if you are going to partner with private investors and you're trying to put a finance plan together, if your residents aren't willing to convert their vouchers, that probably is going to affect how you put your financing package together. That's going to be a huge consideration because it'll affect your gross rent potential as you're trying to put a finance plan together. So keep that in mind. You also want to keep in mind the population that you're serving. I'm working with a PHA that is looking at streamlined voluntary conversion, but their current population is primarily it's an elderly population. So in this case, they already know, they've been meeting with their residents, and they already know that more than 75% of their residents are going to convert their tenant-based vouchers to project-based vouchers. So as they're setting up their financing plan, it makes it easier for them meeting with investors, knowing that they have this funding stream because they're going to have these project-based vouchers there. So again, with streamlined voluntary conversions, you have a small PHA, 250 or fewer units. Again, I mentioned earlier, if you are low rent only PHA and you want to go this route, you will need to partner with another housing authority that has an HCV program. You'll again need to get permission through your board, approval through your board to partner with the agency of your choice, and vice versa. Your residents you are approved for, you will make an application for tenant protection vouchers. And the other thing with getting the TPVs, if you are a 100-unit project and at the time of application, you had 30 units that were vacant, and we hope that's not the case, but you have vacant units on the property, you're able to still obtain vouchers for those vacant units if they were within 24 months, they were vacant within the past 24 months at the time of your SAC of your application to the SAC.
think you were meaning to say if they were occupied in the last 24 months.
I'm sorry, thank you. If they were occupied within the last 24 months, you're able to get vouchers for those. Thanks for that correction. And so again, if you want a project-based vouchers with the streamlined voluntary conversion, very important, you have to have the tenant's consent to convert that voucher to project-based. Okay, so with streamlined conversion, the PHA can only spend public housing funds on units that are under a declaration of trust or DOT. Therefore, the PHA should plan to use, if you have if you have funds available prior to the submission of your application, if you want to rehab some of your units prior to the actual submission of your application, you need to do that, because once your project is approved, you're not able to use the public housing funds. Remember I mentioned with RAD that you can use your capital funds, your operating funds, you can use it towards your conversion. With streamlined conversion, you cannot do that. So if you're planning on converting and your property needs substantial rehab, those funds have to be spent prior to application. Also, with streamlined conversion, you're committing to HUD that you are going to convert all of your public housing units. It will be a full conversion, and you're committing to leaving the program. I think I've beat this. I think I've beat this horse enough. If the residents, PHAs can only project-based units if the residents voluntarily agree. And I did not add, but I'd like to say now that that does need to be in writing, that the resident is agreeing to allow you to project-base their tenant-based voucher.
But also, let me ask you, if my recollection is correct, they give them the option. If the agency says, look, we're going to continue to operate this project as rental housing, project-based voucher assistance, that resident has to be given the option or explain they can take that a voucher, tenant-based voucher, and go elsewhere. They have a choice, or they can, or reside right there in that unit with a project-based, with project-based voucher.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, actually, they can opt to reside in that unit with a tenant-based or project.
Right. When we say tenant, right? If you're project-based assistance, it's going to be project-based, right? But it's through tenant-based. It's all.
That's been the hurdle that makes. That's why streamlined voluntary conversion hasn't taken off, is because it's really, really difficult to project-base the units, because a tenant, I'm not sure if I'm a tenant, what reason I would choose if I'm going to stay. If I'm going to stay and I got a choice between a tenant-based voucher and staying here, or a project-based voucher and staying here, I'm taking the tenant-based. I mean, I don't know why a tenant would take a project-based. They're just giving up some rights by doing so. So that's been the challenge, and that's why HUD's so stringent that we got to have it in writing that the tenant consents to this, because we want to make sure the tenant fully understood their rights, that they could stay in that unit with a tenant-based voucher, which would mean at the end of a year, they don't have to wait until another voucher is available. They could move at the end of a year regardless. So that's kind of been the hurdle that's made voluntary conversion less attractive, because housing authorities that want to use it as a tool to project-based vouchers at that development, very difficult to do that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one other thing, David, that one ED expressed to me last year. He was contemplating, he was like, yeah, we're gonna go for it. He was concerned that, look, if we do this and let's say a person would get a tenant base, they make the choice to go elsewhere, does the housing authority lose that voucher as a part of its ACC?
No, it remains a part of your baseline, and if you have enough vouchers freed up, you could then project base. So you can project base without competition a unit that you're using to replace former um, assisted housing that's been lost. So in this case, you convert it from public housing. So you could project base that unit if the tenant vacates. The challenge is, let's say you have 200 vouchers, and you do a 100 unit conversion. And if all the 100 families move, well, technically you could now project-based voucher those 100 units that were left vacant. Problem is, you now have a total of 300 vouchers, but I don't have 100 vouchers freed up to project base. So it's challenging in a few ways. If you have a smaller program, you may not have, even when you have a chance to project base that unit, I might not have a voucher freed up to do it. So if half the tenants vacate, I'd like to project base those half, but I've got to have enough vouchers in my baseline that are going to turn over this year to make that work. Did that make sense?
Yes, it does, David.
Yes, of course.
Then the other thing to keep in mind with streamline conversion, just because this whole situation with the vouchers and the residents and them knowing that they have to give permission for you to project base that voucher, it's one of the three cylinders for repositioning. It's the one where HUD is required to actually attend one of the resident meetings, where you're informing the residents of their options if you decide to go streamline voluntary conversion.
Yeah, Kim, we had even in the early days when this said, well, can the housing authority incentivize? Because arguably the difference between a project-based voucher and a tenant-based voucher for somebody staying in the property, it's a fairly small differentiation. So we'd ask, can a housing authority incentivize? Look, if you have a choice between a tenant-based and a project-based voucher, if you're willing to accept the project, I'll give you, whatever, first month free, for instance, or I'll give you a microwave. And they said we cannot. Legal looked at it and said no, you wouldn't be able to do that. So still trying to find ways to kind of get over that hurdle in project basing vouchers, but some PHAs have been able to make it work.
Again, as I mentioned earlier, my PHA that right now is in the process of coming on board, they're looking at streamline. But again, they have met with their residents multiple times and have determined, and they have an elderly population. The residents, they're in a great area. The residents know they're not moving, so they're going into it knowing that they're getting the majority of their residents are going to relinquish their tenant base and go project base. So again, just something to think about between Streamline and Section 18. I mean, so like with Section 18, with Streamline conversion, you're looking at Notice 2019-05. We do have a great Streamline voluntary conversion checklist that's available to you. Again, with this having different nuances, we have the repositioning panel to assist you. It is our hope that for those of you who decide to consider Streamline, or either of our either of the three of our repositioning options, we do plan to provide training that goes actually through the process once you jump on board. So we will cover the checklist in the form of a training to help you navigate that process. So as I mentioned earlier, with the Section 18 or Streamline, the application process is done through our special application center as opposed to through the field office. So not only will you apply for the Section 18, with the vouchers is a separate application process on its own, and you'll be filling out HUD form 52515. That you will submit to the field office, but it does end up going to the SAC because they ultimately approve the voucher process. Then, and you are responsible for the relocation of your resident, the cost of relocation for the residents. Um, the HGV, normal HGV or requirements apply to the vouchers that the residents receive. Um, where it says the PHA can offer tenant-based or project-based, well, that's with the streamlined voluntary conversion. If you receive the replacement TPVs, that is added to your current HGV baseline. And currently, PHAs are receiving tenant protection vouchers for units that were occupied within the last 24 months. We talked about that earlier. If you don't already have a Section 8 program, you're still eligible to go through this process as long as you partner with another PHA that has an HCV program. I'm not sure about the last bullet point. David, you are
Well, appropriations, you talking appropriations?
Yeah.
That's another word of saying, look, if Congress appropriate the funds, that's a disclaimer. But
okay, all right.
Same thing with any funding, right? Capital fund next year, we don't know. Okay. Congress doesn't pass. Yeah, that's what that means.
Yeah, they're always afraid that we're going to run out of. So they appropriate so many tenant protection vouchers each year, and if there was a run on the bank, a run on the tenant protection vouchers, there's a chance where you could say, I need tenant protection vouchers. You say, we don't have any right now. You'll have to wait a few months until we get a new appropriations. And it doesn't mean you don't get the tenant protection vouchers, just I don't have any to give you. So what they're saying is if that were ever to happen, HUD reserves a right to say, we're going to prioritize which cases get the tenant protection vouchers and which have to wait.
Right, thank you. So,
I don't want to be excuse me, Kimberly, I don't want to be a leaker, but I know for a fact that that money is tenant protection. A lot has been requested, probably in the past decade, but there's a lot of that get don't get obligated, obviously, don't get used. There's not a lot of repositioning, need or demand for it. But as David stated, if there's an instance where all agents say, hey, you know what, we're going to do it. The other ones say, we're going to do it, then the demand will go up and the money, you may run out. But the way it's been the trend in the previous years, the chances of that happening are slim to none, I believe.
I absolutely agree. All the experts say we got more than enough tenant protection vouchers. There's no need to worry. That's just a cautionary thing.
So, let's see. All right. So I know repositioning again, it's a word that's been going around all the housing authorities, and people have different thoughts on repositioning. It's not designed to take away housing. It's not designed to get rid of housing authorities. It really and truly is designed to help our residents. It's designed to help us preserve affordable housing because there is such a need for it. This is an option that really it allows the public housing authorities to partner with private investors to leverage some equity to get the funding that's necessary to allow our public housing authorities to continue to operate. I know that there are housing authorities out there that struggle with the amount of funding that they're getting right now, that it's just not enough to do all of the things that need to be done at the housing authority. And this is an option that will allow it to be done. But it's voluntary. It's not something that anybody has to jump on board. It's not a decision that has to be made, but I would encourage you all to think long-term to think about the condition of the properties that you have right now, to truly look at what does this property look like 10 years from now if I stay on the same funding trend. And this was um, a short training, just a short introduction, but we are so willing to help the housing authorities again with one-on-one, because I think it truly does need a one-on-one, because you do need the opportunity to sit down or talk with your portfolio management specialist and whoever else at the office you need to talk to, our facilities managers, our financial analysts, but just to get the history on your housing authority, what your capital funds have looked like, what are the physical needs of the property, is it going to be viable 10, 15 years from now, and what repositioning can offer your housing authority. I hope that you will take the opportunity to look at the repositioning options based on the notices that are noted in this presentation, and contact your portfolio management specialist and request a one-on-one if it's something that you're on the fence about, and that you just still, after this presentation, again, it was a light presentation, but it's designed to just pique your interest, and we'd like to give you that deep dive look into your individual housing authority to assess, is repositioning a viable option for you? Are there any questions?
Kimberly, this is Hattie from Texas Naro. I did receive a question. That was privately sent to me. So it says, just for clarification on section 22, if a PHA originally had 300 units, then converted 100 units, does this PHA now qualify for section 22 since its current inventory is under 250 units?
So they had 300 and they've already converted 100?
Yes, that's correct. And so they're under 250 units.
Yes, they would qualify for streamlined voluntary conversion.
That was a great question. I like that. That was an interesting question. We had one in, well, I'm not going to name the number. You probably provide a VHA, but let's say an agency in New Orleans jurisdiction, Louisiana, that had a RAD, public housing only, rental assistance demonstration. And they wanted to do that. They started off with that and got CHAP and all that. And then they change and they say, okay, well, we want to do, we're going to demolish on section 18 a certain percentage to get under the 250 threshold. And then we're going to do streamlined voluntary conversion once we get under 250. And, we had to explain to them at that point in terms of their PHA plan that they could not do that. They weren't in a position to even talk about streamline until they completed that action, got under 250. That's one thing. And in another instance, also to add on that, since they're only public housing, program administrator agency, they're gonna have to do that, partnering with another PHA that administers a voucher program, since they don't administer one. So there was a lot of things there, but that was a great question by whoever asked that, because you got to get under, once you get under 250, then you're in that streamlined voluntary conversion status where you can do it.
And I'd like to just piggyback on what Byron just mentioned. The one thing about repositioning is that when you pick your option, you're not necessarily tied to just that option. It kind of allows you to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I'm dealing with a housing authority right now, as Byron mentioned, that was actually awarded a CHAP to convert their entire portfolio to RAD. So they've gone through almost probably 80% of their units have been converted to RAD. Well, they went from RAD to Section 18. So So they're also doing RAD. They're also doing a Section 18 demolition, and then decided, you know what, we're going to reposition the last of our units through streamlined voluntary conversion. And as Byron mentioned, they've got to get to that threshold where they're under 250, so they won't be able to move forward until the demolition is completed. But once that happens, they'll then be under that 250 unit threshold. And I guess the point is, you can you can mix and match part of this repositioning. If you may have scattered sites, and maybe you want to uh, reposition. Maybe you want to do RAD on part of the site, and but the scattered sites are far out and they qualify for Section 18. So you can think outside the box with repositioning. Any other questions?